Tucson against Citroen's facelifted C5 Aircross, and we get you a review of the Bajaj CT 125X. Hello and welcome to Overdrive. I am Soini Dutt. The Citroen C5 Aircross is a good Citroen flagship in every way possible, but can it hold its own against the tech-laden Hyundai Tucson? It's time to find out.
The C5 Aircross, the model with which Citroen began its innings in India. Lovely car, beautiful radical design, spacious cabin, superb ride quality. In fact, we even compared it to its step-sibling, the Jeep Compass, and it emerged victorious. That in a way meant that it was the best buy in the segment. What you see here is the updated 2022 C5 Aircross. So what you get is an updated face that looks wider. You get this smoked effect on the headlights, Y-shaped LED DRLs which now aren't an extension of the logo anymore. And overall, I think it looks very handsome. So does that mean that the best buy in the segment is now even better? Well, it's not that simple because this segment also has this.
The Hyundai Tucson, back in a new avatar, and how? I don't know about you, but this design makes me want one right now.
I've often said this, radical designs may not age well, but then again, most car buyers these days don't think beyond 5 years. And on a similar thought process, I think the C5 Aircross was the most radical looking crossover in this space until last year. But now, the Tucson sets new benchmarks with elements like these discrete DRLs in the grille or those sharp character lines.
Both cars look new age, but the Tucson has a more aggressive stance and in-your-face styling. If this design is too shouty for you, the C5 could seem more appealing and polished in comparison. The C5 is wider and taller, and the more upright nose gives it a commanding stance. The Tucson has a sportier, low-slung face and is the longest car in the segment with the longest wheelbase too.
Both the cars will give you powered tailgates. And despite the taller overall height of the C5, the tailgate doesn't open too tall. So for shorter drivers, shorter people, this is good news. This one opens way taller. Now on paper, this one gives you 580 liters of boot space, whereas this only has 540. But I think this is going to be more usable. One, if you look at the parcel shelf, it's a retractable parcel shelf, whereas this one is a fixed one. So that liberates more room for maybe taller cargo. It also has enough room, enough depth in there for larger suitcases. This one feels a little shorter in comparison. That said, the equal split, the equal three-way split for the seat also means that this has more versatility for maybe longer items, whereas this one gives you a 40-60 split. So even that is versatile, but maybe not as versatile as that. And while the C5 needs you to pull some straps to drop the seats, the Tucson gives you a more convenient arrangement with two levers that can easily drop the seats from the convenience of your boot. Longer wheelbase, smaller boot, that essentially means that the cabin space is actually better. You get tremendously good knee room, very good leg space. Headspace is not that bad at all. In fact, even for a 6-footer, it shouldn't be a problem at all. You get a nice big panoramic roof which extends all the way to the back. And the reason why I'm sitting on this side this time around is because this is now the boss seat, and it also lets me maximize the knee room and the leg space with these two switches on the front passenger seat. And that's not all. If you also want to get a quick snooze, there's also a recline function. Not a small one, but a big one. How's that? So the taller overall height should essentially give you better headroom, though it doesn't. Because the way the roof curves in, the roof liner curves in, you don't get as much headroom. I am 5'8" and it's already not feeling as roomy as it felt in the Tucson. Taller people will certainly have a problem with that. There's a panoramic roof, it extends all the way back here as well. So there's a nice roomy feeling inside the car overall. But in terms of the sheer space, well, it's just not as much as the Tucson. Will I complain about it? Not really. There's enough knee room, there's good foot space. These are comfortable seats with all this cushioning. They are nice and comfortable. Even from a safety standpoint, it's not a problem at all. You do get a bit of recline even on these seats, but that's the maximum. You can't really go more than that. So for overall comfort, I think I'll still go with the Tucson.
The three-piece rear seats of the C5 also mean they aren't as generously sized. so the Tucson would be a clear pick if you're going to be chauffeured around.
I like how the minimalist design liberates so much more perceivable room or perceivable space inside the cabin. There's a nice roomy feeling to this cabin, and that's not only because of the sunroof and the large glass house, but also because of the lighter upholstery. Now, in terms of the features, both the C5 as well as the Tucson are very closely matched on what they have to offer. But where the Tucson edges ahead is with small bits like the memory seating for the electronically controlled driver's seat. You also get a ventilation and a heating function in case you want to use that up in the mountains. But you have both those functionalities. The ventilation function also works very well in our conditions. The fans are not too noisy, so that's another good thing. The infotainment, the touchscreen size, resolution, very comparable again between the two cars, but this one gets connected tech. It is also mated to the Bose audio. You don't get branded audio in the C5. There's also ambient lighting to set the mood.
So even for those who will spend more time in the driver's seat, the Tucson offers a better set of features as you would expect of any Hyundai car. Therefore, in the space and the features department, it edges ahead of the C5.
Well, these two SUVs are pretty closely matched in terms of engine and performance numbers, and yet they handle quite differently. More on that after this very short break. Welcome back, you're watching Overdrive. Now, the Citroen C5 Aircross and the Hyundai Tucson are pretty much identical in terms of their mechanical orientation, and yet there are finer details that do edge one SUV over the other. It's time to find out what those finer details are.
Even the powertrain is quite easygoing. First up, this is right up there with Hyundai in terms of the refinement. We've often said this, that the new generation Hyundai diesel engines feel very refined, and this engine is no less. It feels very refined. That gravelly note is not there. Even higher up the rev range, you don't really hear the engine all that much. The overall sound insulation is also quite good, not only for the powertrain noises, but also for curbing the road noises, the tire noise, etc. It curbs all of that quite nicely. In fact, this is a more silent cabin than even the Tucson. And though I say that the powertrain is easy going, when you go pedal to the metal, it's not too slow. It's about a second slower compared to the Tucson, but it's still a sub 10 second 0 to 100 timing. That is pretty quick. Even the roll-on timings are marginally slower than the Tucson, but you will not really feel that difference. That difference is more on paper than in the real world. The gearboxes on both these cars are brilliant. These are 8-speed torque converters, and they work just as intended. They are quite telepathic. They don't really make you wait too long for a downshift. Even the upshifts are nice and quick. So nice enjoyable powertrains on both these cars. Just that the C5 feels a little bit more mature, a little bit more laid back. It's not as sporty, as eager as the Tucson.
Compared to the C5 Aircross, the Tucson is only marginally powerful. But on the road, the difference feels vast because of how the engine responds and accelerates.
The first thing you notice when you get off the mark in the new Tucson is the kind of eager response that you get from this diesel engine. So diesel to diesel comparison, this one puts out more power on paper, and it immediately shows in the kind of throttle response that this gives you. Now this may or may not be to everyone's taste, and that's because that initial, the low-end response is a bit too sharp, and that may not be to everyone's liking. It might feel overwhelming for some.
The Tucson is available in multiple powertrain options, while the C5 Aircross limits your choices to a diesel automatic, but a finely tuned powertrain at that, and more fuel efficient too. Its driving modes also feel far more effective than the Tucson, especially when you want a calm and composed drive in the city environment.
The jewel in the crown for the C5 is the ride quality. That is the biggest talking point for the C5. Even over the harsher stuff, the suspension remains nice and silent. It's a beautiful feeling. For this particular price point, in fact, anything in and around this price point, I think it just nails it. It is better than some of the German luxury cars when it comes to ride quality. The flip side to that, of course, is the handling. The handling manners, they don't feel as focused as the Tucson. They don't feel as taut as, say, the Compass or even the Tiguan for that matter. There is a fair bit of vertical movement. Of course, if you are easy with the car, if you go with that laid-back nature of this car, the laid-back nature of the powertrain. And if you're easy with the car around bends, it feels nice and composed. It loves to go around the bends, maintaining its composure. Just be too harsh with the vehicle, just enter the corner too fast or something, and then you realize that, yeah, there is a fair bit of roll. It does lean quite a bit over the outer wheels, and then things can get a bit unnerving. In terms of the ride quality, Hyundai has been doing some pretty good setups for the Indian market. Now, compared to the outgoing Tucson, the new one has a bit of a firm edge to it. But the ride quality is quite good, not too much to complain about. But on the harsher stuff, it does tend to thud quite a bit.
Speaking of security and safety, while both have plenty of safety features, the Euro NCAP has awarded 4 stars to the pre-facelift Citroen C5 Aircross, which also had ADAS features in Europe back in 2019. The Indian C5 does not get them even today, despite the inflated price tag. The Hyundai Tucson has earned a 5-star rating at the Euro NCAP last year, and its spec is pretty similar to the model sold in India.
You've probably heard those beeps. Now that is ADAS. One very big news or one headlining feature about the Tucson is the availability of the ADAS functionality, the ADAS safety features, lane keep assist, forward collision warning, auto braking, adaptive cruise control. All those kind of things are available, which adds another layer of safety to the already long list of safety features that this car has to offer. That is one other department where the Tucson clearly outshines the C5. Another department where the Tucson one-ups the C5 is with the availability of the all-wheel drive option. If you are, say, staying in the hilly areas, maybe up north where you have snowy, icy conditions at times, or maybe down south, Chikmagalur, Coorg, those kind of areas, and you need the option of an all-wheel drive to maybe drive on some slippery conditions, you have that option with the Tucson. With the C5, at least in the India spec model, you don't get that.
Though I wish that Hyundai should have added the traction control modes or terrain modes to the non-AWD variants as well, just like the C5 or even its lesser siblings from Kia. Interestingly though, for the price of the C5 Aircross, you can get yourself a Tucson diesel all-wheel drive or even a Compass all-wheel drive. And this is where Citroen loses the plot. Sure, it feels premium, but so does the Tucson and the Jeep. It has an excellent ride quality, but for most people out there, it won't be enough to justify the difference in price and the lack of features like the connected tech and ADAS functions. The Tucson understands how tricky this segment is and therefore settles for a conservative price tag without compromising on features and tech. And so, as the points add up, the Tucson emerges as the clear winner of this test.
Watching Overdrive. Now, does Bajaj's replacement of the Discover 125 has what it takes to topple the top-selling Honda Shine in the 125cc commuter motorcycle segment? Well, it's time to find out.
Now, as we're all aware, Bajaj Auto certainly likes to cater to various riding styles and styles of motorcycles out here in India. And especially in the 125cc motorcycle space, well, we already have a couple of options in the form of the Pulsar NS 125, which is the modern sporty motorcycle from Bajaj. Then you have the regular Pulsar 125, which is a slightly more conservative approach to the sporty motorcycle aspect. And Bajaj really has to tackle this segment with its new CT 125X. Now, this motorcycle was launched just a couple of months ago, last August, and though the Discover 125cc isn't around, this is Bajaj's main competitor to the leader in this current segment, which is the Honda Shine. So, what's so good about it? What makes it so special? We are here to find out. So, let's get to it.
From afar, you'll think that the CT125X looks like a carbon copy of the smaller CT110X, and to some extent you'd be right, because they do have a lot in common, like the round headlamp with its LED unibrow, which is a nod at the older Boxer CT, and the slightly raised front mudguard that's built to take on battered rural roads. Then there's the pretty simple 11-litre tank with its tank grips, the flat ribbed seat, those sturdy crash guards, and also the rack behind the grab rail. It's even got the same chassis suspension setup and the twin analog instrumentation as the smaller displacement model. However, there are some unique bits on this one. For instance, the metal protector plate above the front brake lever that keeps the mechanical CBS components safe from physical damage. And in case you thought about it, the CT110X doesn't get CBS. Also, the tires on the 125 are now tubeless. Now, the CT125X is built to function as a proper no-frills commuter motorcycle at its core. And in terms of features, well, let's just say that the list is far from extensive. Its headlamp, tail lamp and turn indicators are all bulb units. The twin instrumentation clocks do look a bit dated. And the switchgear, well, it feels very basic, but it also feels built to last. You do get a conveniently located USB charger socket to juice up your phone or some device as you please on the go. And the crash guards and tank grips are standard fit as well. Now, the major differentiating factor between the CT110X and the CT125X is, as the numbers in its name suggest, the engine. The 124.4cc single-cylinder air-cooled motor is a derivative of the now defunct Discover 125cc engine, and it is, as you would expect, upon power and torque over the smaller displacement bike. This one makes around 11 PS and 11 Nm of torque. So you have basically the same commuter styling and rugged design as the smaller cc bike, just with some additional power thrown in. Now, after riding the bike around the city, my only grouse with this motor is that it does lack a certain bit of refinement which I would have liked.
Now, the CT125X is a hardcore commuter motorcycle and it's not built for speed or anything like that. It's meant to be durable, meant to be reliable, and it's built for comfort. Now, in terms of riding position, as you can see, very straightforward commuter riding position, foot pegs, little forward set, and very relaxed handlebar riding position as well. Keeps you relaxed. The seat little on the softer side and not too bad for riding around an hour in the saddle. It is a little soft. You will feel the brunt of it on your backside the longer you ride it, but all in all a very comfortable motorcycle. So it's not built for speed. Suspension really meant to soak up bumps and stuff on the go. Does very well at that, and it manages quite well in the handling department at the speeds it's capable of doing. So the motor, it can do around 100 kph, but it takes a lot of time to get there, a lot of effort, and a lot of gear changes involved in doing so. But yes, you ride this bike smooth, calm, and yeah, it does feel very composed, unfluttered over the rough stuff. It feels best at around 60-65 kmph. Engine just slightly on the boil. You have a little bit of gas to like really accelerate as much as you can.
This Bajaj CT 125X is currently the most affordable 125cc commuter bike that you can get your hands on in the country. This variant, with its disc brake up front, costs around 74,500, which should make it around 8 grand cheaper than the Honda Shine, which is never a bad thing.
Now, if you're looking into this particular segment of motorcycles, well, you're looking for one thing and one thing alone. That's to get from point A to point B in the most frugal way possible. And that's where the Honda Shine 125 really stood out, because although that is a very bare bones motorcycle, a basic motorcycle of sorts, it is very low on maintenance and running cost, which is a big plus point in this category. And that's somewhere where the Bajaj, it seems to match up to the Honda in certain aspects. Well, it isn't, the engine isn't as refined as the Hondas, but it does have a certain uniqueness and a feel to it that is very Bajaj.
All in all, the CT 125X, well, it's not going to win any prize at a beauty pageant, but although it's skinny and weighs just 130 kgs, it looks like a tough, durable commuter bike for sure.
With that, it's time for us to wrap up this week's edition of Overdrive. But remember, you can stay in touch with the team through Facebook, Twitter, as well as YouTube, and you can follow our latest updates on Instagram. We'll see you next week. Until then, goodbye. Many thanks for watching.